Hello, hello, everyone. Um, if you are watching this, I'm so glad that you are here. Had a little technical difficulty because why not? That's just how it goes. And so I know we'll spend some time probably letting other people join and get in. And so if you don't know my guest, I will have her introduce herself to you. This is an exciting time for us. We have joked that our books are like brother-sister books. And so we both have written books on sobriety and especially approaching that from a faith lens and a gospel-centered lens. And so we thought, hey, how can we do something fun and allow other people kind of into our stories and behind the scenes a little bit. And so let's do a live. And so that's what I scheduled. That's what I started. And then, if you had clicked on the link and now you're finding this one and you're like, what happened? Well, technology. So, so glad to have you. Ericka, before we get into kind of what we had slated to talk about, I would just be honored if you would introduce yourself to everyone here.
Yes. Hey, everyone on John's Substack that doesn't know me, and those from my Substack. I'm glad that you're here. Yeah, Substack technology is catching up, but we're going to get there. I am Ericka Andersen, and yes, my book, Freely Sober Rethinking Alcohol Through the Lens of Faith, came out a few months or a couple months after John's book. And I always tell John, people are constantly, have you heard of this book, Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic? Like, it would be so great for you. And I was like, yes, I have heard of that book. And actually, like most of us that are in this space, thankfully, just in the past couple of years, have gotten to know each other. And I'm here in Indiana. I am a Christian, a mama too. My kids are 10 and 8. I'm in Indianapolis, and I've been a writer for many years. This is my third book, but I really feel like the most, I don't know, powerful and impactful book so far, and really the one that I've gotten
Mm,
the most feedback on, and the one that I feel like is going to be very long lasting because I just feel like I'm at the very beginning of this whole process, and just there was something missing in this space. I think before some of us were kind of called to step into it, and I think those of us who are here, you and I, and people like our friend Caroline and Christy Osborne of Love Life Sober and
mhm.
Sherry of She Surrenders and all of these other folks that we work with. I think we're all sort of in it for the long haul. And I think because of that, there's going to be a lot of people help. So very excited to talk with you today and glad we were able to do this.
And so, before we're going to talk about the summer, by the way. So if you're joining, you're like, what is this about? We're going to kind of try to give you, in both mine and Erica's stories of sobriety, summer relapse is a thing, right? And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about why that is. We're going to talk about some of the myths around summer drinking and then some of the strategies that you can use in a practical sense, even to kind of combat that, right? Before, though, we get to that, I think I would. I'll start by just sharing a little bit about my story, especially as it relates to the summer and sobriety. And so if you're joining this, you likely know that, I say I'm the Christian that became an alcoholic, not the other way around, had knew Jesus, know Jesus, loved Jesus, followed Jesus in so many aspects and had practiced faithful obedience to him. And yet, as people don't like to admit, but everyone I think realizes, is that there was still areas of my life that I hadn't fully turned over to him. And you might think that I mean, well, I hadn't turned my drinking over to him. And I guess on some levels, yes. But really what I found is that, there are underlying root issues that I really hadn't turned over to him. And so instead of inviting and turning to him and, the resources and even some of the common graces that he offers, I turned to alcohol and it was just easier. It was easier to shut my mind off with alcohol. It was easier to just not think with alcohol. And I didn't wake up one morning and just start drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, but it was just kind of a slow fade. And all of that leads to, I would say I always kind of had that up and down relationship with alcohol throughout my adult life. But really when it started to finally look like, in a sense, the quote unquote traditional alcoholic, I guess, Ericka, and you and I talk a lot about this of like, it doesn't have to look like that to be bad or to make a change. But that period was really from about the end of 2021 to the middle of 2023. Middle of 2023, I kind of have my rock bottom moment on a beach in Miami. You can read my book and I talk about that in great detail. And I make the commitment that I'm not going to stop drinking. My wife says, don't stop drinking. That's not what I want. I want you to get to the root. So I make the commitment to get to the root. And I start just digging, right? And I start like doing Christian trauma therapy and really just, what I say is the expulsive power of a new affection, which Thomas Chalmers wrote about in the 1800s, like really just not making my focus not drinking, but making my focus something greater. And I'm going along and, a lot of stuff is clicking, making sense and whatnot. And then I get to 4th of July. So my rock bottom moment, you'll see this. I'll show you this. So the first date is May 27th, which is when I hit rock bottom. The second date is July 9th, which is my sobriety date. Those are two different numbers, right? Because I had been sober for about a month and a half, and then I hit 4th of July weekend. And it was the first holiday that I wasn't drinking, and I underestimated the pull, and I think you can especially speak to this, Ericka, when you start talking. But the pull of society, the pull of culture, just internal pulls, and I get to 4th of July weekend, and I'm battling. I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to drink. I'm not going to drink, and just by the end of that weekend, I'm just like, screw it. And so I go to like the secondary fridge, you have like garage fridge and regular fridge.
Oh, yeah, my story involves a fridge like that.
Yeah. So I go to garage fridge, and there's like some old Trulies or not even old.
Oh
I think
my
they had bought some like for the quote unquote normies, the people who can drink normally.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
And I just start sneaking them. And it was even just, I think, probably like the night before we left. But then that led to a whole week of hidden drinking, where then by the end of the week, it's Friday at like 3:00. My wife comes home and she's like, "You're drunk, aren't you?" I learned my lesson about lying to her. So I said, yes. I said, I am. And the most grace-filled thing in my life, besides Jesus, happened. And my wife goes, I get it. And by the way, I'm fully expecting she's going to tell me it's time to leave. Like, we're going to separate. I told her I was done, all this stuff. And she said, you are talking about things you've never talked about. You are digging into things you have wanted to forget. And you've taken away your coping mechanism. Like, I get it. I don't excuse it, but I get it. And I have not touched a drop of alcohol since then. But as I look back on that, Ericka, like I look at the grip, there's spiritual grip, right? But then I look at like what holidays mean to people in general and mean to people who are struggling with drinking. And so I'm curious, that's my summer relapse story. I'm curious about yours.
Well, first of all, I just love so much your wife's response to that, and I think,
Mhm.
um, not everyone has a supportive spouse, and I know that's one of the biggest things. I don't know if you hear this as well. Um, if you don't have a supportive spouse or a spouse that continues to drink or has their own drinking problem. So, I'm so grateful that your wife, had that attitude towards you. I'm lucky to have a supportive husband as well. But I would also say it made me think of how the grace that we should have for ourselves, like if someone else isn't having that for you, to say, I
Mhm.
get it. Because I think so many times the reasons that we do drink, and we know this, is not because we're being sinful, it's not because we're being bad, it's not because of weak character or low morals, it's because we're
Mhm.
trying to deal with the other thing, with the real thing below the drinking. And so, I encourage people, before I get to my story, to have just a second of that grace for themselves, in those moments, because It is, um, trying to ram yourself through this with self-hatred is not the way to do it. And I did that for a really long time, and that's why it took me so many years to get here. So I will tell you my summer relapse story. Was in let's see, so I had tried on and off for several years, doing 30-day stints and, getting to the end of that 30 days and barely hanging on and maybe hadn't even actually made it, but it was like, "Technically, yeah, I think I did it." Like, I remember Christmas one year, it was like the tail end, and I was like everyone in my family's, like, downstairs in the basement taking shots, and I was like, "Well, this is just a Jello shot, so it doesn't actually count, right?" It was like anything. It was anything. Um, and so I this was summer, I think it was probably, June-ish, maybe the end of May, June, and those sneaky hidden refrigerators, now that you say that, I'm like, "Man, those things suck," because my parents have a huge basement, or sorry, they have a huge refrigerator in their basement, and so when I'm over at my parents' house in the summer, that thing always has beer and wine coolers in it and stuff,
Mhm,
and, but I was down there, it's like this cool, silent place where nobody's ever at. So you go down there by yourself and you're tempted, and I think it was a White Claw, so Truly's,
mhm,
White Claw, kinda the same thing there, and I was like, "I could just drink this really fast and nobody would ever know." And I
mhm,
was like, "Oh," so I'm, like, standing there and I'm like, "Well, I better do it because, like, somebody's gonna come downstairs," and, this is at the point where I had quit drinking for 6 months and everybody knew it. So
mhm.
I chugged this White Claw super fast and I had immediate buzz.
Yeah.
And so I was, like, in a great mood, and I didn't have any more than that, and honestly, I didn't even have any more for probably another week or so, but, like, the Pandora's box had been opened. It was like, "Well," and this was also in the middle of COVID, and so there was a lot of joking about day drinking at that time, if anybody remembers that awful time. The amount that people were drinking during COVID, we all know by now, was absolutely ridiculous, and also that actually led a lot of people to realize what kind of a drinking
Yeah.
problem they actually
Yeah.
had. I mean, that time caused people to really do some internal soul searching about their drinking because all of a sudden they were like, "Oh my gosh, like I really am." So anyway, so that was it was summer, I was by myself, I was alone, it was the big refrigerator with nothing but alcohol in it. And it was just really easy to do it, and I just was at my parents' house, and now my parents are not like it's not like my family is like a big family of drunks by any means, but, like, they drink, and I go to my mom's house, she does not keep we have a lot of cousins and stuff, she doesn't keep sodas or anything else in the house, because all the little cousins and kids, they all drink the soda and leave it around the house, so the only thing to drink at my parents' house when they have gatherings is alcohol. Like,
Mm.
there's nothing but water and IPAs and White Claws and
Yeah.
vodka.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's something that I now know, but I do actually have to come prepared and bring a bunch of my own drinks, now just to keep myself clear. So, but that was the beginning of another 5-month long stretch of drinking that entire summer. And by the end of that summer, I was right back where I started, even though it began slowly enough. And I was like, okay, okay, I've got to, I'm freaking out here. And so I said, I'm doing sober September. Like, I don't know what else to do. I'm doing sober
Mm.
September. Um, I didn't, I didn't do it with the intention of making it last forever because I can't think that way. I can't think about it being forever. But I said, I'm doing 30 days. And within that 30 days, that's when I joined a community and I was able to really um, dig into why I was doing this, and ultimately that led to where I am now. I haven't drank since, but it was piece by piece. It was not, "I'm gonna be sober for 5 years," if you had told me that, I never would have started.
Yep.
So that is my summer relapse story, and in a nutshell, and I think we wanna talk a little bit about I don't know, I'll let you lead the conversation, John, because 'cause I'm not sure where you were going next.
Well, that's okay because I'm like, you're saying stuff, and I'm, like, making notes as you're saying it.
Yes, I was like, "He's got a plan."
It's so no, because it's so good. So, let me ask you this, though, real quick. Like, what do you think, and I know this, I mean, you've literally written a book on this, but real quickly for people who are listening to this before we get into some of the practical aspect, is what was different about the time like, what was different about when sobriety finally took for you versus previously?
One of the things Well, first I wanna say I think those fits and starts were, not to be cliche, it's all part of the journey, but I do think, like, you have to go there to get here, and I needed to have
Mhm.
those experiences, to kind of maybe build the muscle power to kinda get where I needed to be, but I
Mm.
one thing that I always look back and see was different was that was when I joined a support group online, the Luckiest Club, which I always talk about, and that I think that really just made me feel less alone. Like, I had been doing it pretty much alone. Like, I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it, and so once I did that, that really helped, and then at the same time, I I was because I was getting more clear-minded and I had that support, I feel like my relationship with God really, became stronger in that process. Even though it wasn't a faith-based group, like, I
Mhm.
feel like God used that group in so many ways to draw me to himself and to draw me to, um, what healing and freedom could look like.
Mm.
And it's also through that group that I realized that I need to write this book, though, because the group was so great, but it was so absent of any, really any kind of faith experience at all, and I
Yeah.
didn't really feel like my Christianity was explicitly welcome there,
Yeah.
and so it taught me that as well.
Um, I love, like, even though I didn't do AA, you didn't do AA or, 12-step, recovery, I think what what is important is that, like, to understand and know that, like, God can use anything, right? Like, God can
Yes.
show up anywhere. And so even though we didn't do that, even though I prefer that people take a gospel-centered route, it doesn't mean that God can't meet you there. And doesn't mean that you can't even go into those places and like you said, like, bring bring Christ into them. Like, I'd love for people to do that. So, okay, so we wanna talk about some of the myths that people believe about summer drinking. And so, um, we came up with 5. I should say you came up with 5, like, you were better about the homework.
Well,
Um, and I looked at them and I'm like, "Agree, agree, 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 agree." Um, so the first myth, myth number 1, everyone is drinking. Um, Combat that myth. What's your response to that myth, Erica?
well, I think we go into it thinking that, right? But I remember when I one of the first this is what stood out to me. One of the first concerts I went to sober, and I'm very sort of aware of my surroundings and aware of what people are drinking, and I remember being shocked at how many people weren't drinking alcohol, which was like a foreign concept to me at a
Yeah,
concert. I was like, "That guy," and it's hard to tell because they've got those, what is it called? Those crazy waters that they have now that look like
liquid
tall
death.
beers.
Yeah, yeah,
Liquid
yeah.
Death. Yeah, you gotta look closely, but I was like, "Man, there's a lot of people that are just holding Liquid Death and not beer." And I started to realize, wow, a lot less people are drinking than you think,
Mhm.
or they're drinking
Mhm.
a lot less. Like, there are people that are like, "I'll have a half a beer," and you're like, "Well, what's the point?" Right?
Amen.
And so it's like, I think, that's the all or nothing thinking, and if you actually start to look around, even if you were, like, to do an informal survey of, somewhere that you're hanging out, you may realize, "Oh, okay, well, it's actually not true," and it's really not
Mhm.
true.
I think what we tend to do is we tend to see, what we wanna see, right?
Yeah.
So when I was drinking and I wanted to justify my drinking, everyone was drinking. Um, but on the other side, now that I'm sober, it is amazing to me how much more I'm attuned to people who are not drinking, right? And I think that's what it is. It's like when you're drinking, you're more attuned to people who are drinking because they're doing what you want to do, right? But when you're sober and not drinking, you're like attuned to how many more people actually aren't drinking. Um,
Right. And you did notice people that weren't drinking before and if they were sort of in your group, but it was kind of annoying, It
yeah,
was almost like,
yeah,
"Oh,
yeah,
why not? Well, why not?" You
yeah.
really wanted them to for some crazy reason.
Right, right. All right. Second myth: summer memories are made with alcohol. Listen, I'm going to respond to this one first and say,
Mhm.
actually, in my experience, summer memories are forgotten with alcohol.
That's true.
Um, and so I think we kind of have this. We idealize And this is where I think a lot of culture and marketing comes in. We idealize that, like, America, 4th of July, Memorial Day, like, it's fireworks, it's beer, it's freedom, it's, you know, hot dogs, brats if you're from Wisconsin like me. Um, and, and yet, I think more memories have been forgotten because of alcohol than have been made because of alcohol. So that's my
You
response to
know,
that one.
I agree, and it also makes me think of weddings,
Yeah.
which, I've told this story, I'll tell it real quick, of a friend of mine, who they were a Christian couple, they were getting married, and they were waiting until marriage, and so it was like wedding night was kind of a big deal, like, in a way that it's not for everybody, and her fiancé or her husband, he got so, so, so drunk at the reception that she called us crying, like, that he was, like, passed out in the limo on the way to the hotel, and I just thought, "Oh my gosh, is it really worth it? Is it really worth it?"
Mm. Mhm.
And people taking shots before walking down the aisle and just like, "Oh my gosh, you're blurring, like, this most beautiful, amazing, like, time in your life," and, thinking of, when if you have kids, for example, like, those are, like, precious, precious moments, and I think we just have accepted because we've always drank, like, it's just such a cultural thing that you do. We've just accepted that this is just what you do and this is how it is, and not realized what we're missing out on.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember sitting there over spring break, I was in Sanibel Island with my family, and I was watching my kids, like, make sandcastles and, like, running through the waves and everything, and I just was like, "I am getting every, like, little bit of this," and I wouldn't wanna be distracted by alcohol, and if I was drinking, I would be, like, I wouldn't be, like, paying attention to, like, just the little details that you miss. It's that, like, the fine tuning of the world really is
Yes.
is faded, or it's fuzzy, and that goes to also something I talk about, which is, like, you miss, like, subtle cues in someone's
Yeah.
voice, expression, or, like, something that God wants to tell you because he speaks in a whisper, and if you
Mm.
can't hear him when you're drinking. So that's something I would say to that.
Yeah, I think, um, it has been shocking to me how much more I've picked up on since being sober, right? Like, how much more beauty I see, how much, more nuance I can understand, right? And so that contributes, I think, to much better memory making. Um And then we kind of, responded to this next one, but, things aren't as fun without alcohol. Um, and so I think, what I have seen is I have had just as much fun without like, I'll give you an example. I'm a huge Green Bay Packers fan. I'm an owner of the Green Bay Packers. Um, and so, like, I remember I went to a Green Bay Packers game in January of 2023. I believe it was. Might have been January of 2022. And, got really drunk. And it was just like, I remember most of the game, but yet it was, it's foggy. It's whatever. I went to the first game of the season this last year, and, like, I remember everything, I'm taking it in, and I was with people who were drinking and, fine. They can drink and whatnot, and I had just as much fun, like, not just as much, I had more fun, right? Um, so for me, that's been my experience, right? Is like, I've just replaced it, right? So the things that I thought could only be fun with alcohol, either that's been proven wrong, or if it was something that I could only have fun doing while drunk, it's like, I found something better, you know? I don't know about you.
Yeah, and it's maybe a different feeling, or a different kind of fun for sure.
Yeah.
And also I think we have a lot of nostalgia about memories. I think that we group alcohol in with all of these things we've done, and we give alcohol way too much credit for the fun and the love and the good times. Like, we're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, it was the alcohol." It's like, "No, it was the people, it was the experience, it was the moment." Like, it was
Mhm.
so much all the other things. I'm like, "You're giving alcohol so much credit for all of these, like, beautiful moments in your life," and that like, that's a lie. Like, that's a lie that you've been believing for
Right.
so long and using it as an excuse that you need it.
Mhm.
And there are people that have like, I have a couple of family members that have never drank, like, never drink alcohol 'cause, like, I have alcoholics in my family, and, like, one of their children, for example, I'm thinking of, like, she was like, I'm never drinking after seeing what it did to my dad." And, like, she's had a great life, like, she has so
Mhm.
many great memories,
Yeah.
um, and I think we spin it up into something that it's not. Our minds do a lot of work for us, and when that's part of the work in getting sober and being sober curious is, like, you actually, like, kind of take those situations and, like, deconstruct them and be like, "Is it really like that? Is it really like that?"
Mm.
And it turns out many times, like, it really isn't, but you've
Mhm.
gotta take the time to think a little bit more deeply about it.
Alright, moving on to the next one. The next myth number 4 about drinking in the summer, it's just seasonal, I'll cut back in the fall. Um, Listen, any season that I said I'll either, like, I'll cut back after this, or, um, because I've cut back, I won't do it as much as I did previous, like, it's just all eh, neither of those material.
There's always something else. There's always another
Yeah,
season.
yeah, exactly,
Every
exactly.
season has its beverages, like, it's like green beer and, like, pumpkin beer in the fall and, like, they changed out the taps at all the breweries, like,
Right,
you know?
right, exactly. It's like, "Okay, I'm gonna do a shandy beer, and then it's the Oktoberfest, and then it's the winter beers, and then it's the spring one," and, whatever. There's there's a drink for every season, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I always think of a story of a friend who she doesn't have a drinking problem, but it always made me kinda sad, this story where she was like, "Well, I really wanna," like, she wanted to get pregnant, but she was like, "But I think I'm gonna wait until after next spring break when we go on this cruise with my family, blah, blah, blah." And I was like, "You're gonna wait to try to get pregnant for, like, 9 months so you can drink on the cruise? Like, come
Mm,
on, like, the cruise can't be fun if you're not drinking." But people do things like that. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna wait until after my cousin's wedding," or, "I'm gonna wait until after we go to Paris," but if you are choosing to wait for that reason, the chances of you actually being able to quit after that, I mean, you have to start now. You don't wait till January 1st, and I say this about everything, not just drinking, but, like, anything that's worth doing. It's like, don't wait to start for some ridiculous
mm,
start date. It's like, start tomorrow,
mhm,
because if you really wanna do something and I'm kinda getting a little off track here, but, like, the waiting, the seasonal waiting is not like, it's just gonna be another season next time, and
mhm.
it's gonna be just as hard to start then.
And I know, like, by the way, if you're watching and, we're talking about, "Oh, how ridiculous that was," like, but Eric and I both did it. Like, meaning, like,
Yeah.
we both use those
Yes.
justifications. Like, so we're not
Yeah.
saying that as like, if you're finding yourself doing those justifications, "Oh my gosh, you're so stupid." We're like, "No," but the logic, right, that we convince ourselves is okay and is normal is like, "No, no, no," right? That's where we're at. Now that we're on
Yeah.
the other side of it, it's but, like, we used variations of that, you know? It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I
Uh
think it's just a reality sort of check to be like, "I just wanna let you know that you're not gonna wanna quit any more then than you do now."
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
if that's the headspace that you're in.
Right, exactly. Alright, myth number 5, the 5th and final one, not drinking means missing out. Talk about that.
Well, I think it kind of goes back to everything we've been saying, which is just that, we associate I mean, there is a drink for every situation, and I think it feels like a portion of the experience is gonna be gone and therefore not a full experience. For those of
Mhm,
us who have been drinking for 20 plus years, um, I can't imagine going to a tailgate and not like, what's the point in going to a tailgate without being able to drink beer, play beer pong or whatever? And I think every single sort of fun thing in our lives, almost all of them have an alcohol association with it. And so we feel like it's not a full experience without it. And as we've already kind of discussed, like that's simply not true. Like, let's focus on, like, why we're there, like, the team that we're watching play or the people that we're there to talk to. And also just, like, I think focusing on the people is really important. It's like, who are you going to see? Like, how can
Mm,
different goal in that sort of experience? I mean, for so many years, I feel like I didn't really see people because I was just there to, like, have my fun and experience, and then I wasn't attuned to, like, going back to, like, being able to hear God's voice, I wasn't attuned to the things that God might have for me in
right,
those situations, like, what is he like, I don't do this very often or very well, but I think it's a great idea to like, "God, like, what do you want from me in this day, in this experience?" Like, I've made it a point to I like to quote I don't know if this is a quote, but something that I read from Bob Goff years ago, where he's like, "Make time to be inconvenienced." Like, his whole thing is,
mm,
I don't know if he still does this, but he used to say he doesn't make appointments because he doesn't like to have to, like, leave, like, the present appointment that God has given him wherever he is in order to go make an appointment, meet someone that he made plans with 2 weeks ago. She's like, "Just call me if I'm free, I'll let you know."
mm,
And I think there's something really special about that, and as Christians, like, we're always walking with, like, a mission, and, we never know the person that God has for us, like, to see, to hear, to, I don't know, like, somehow do his work in a way that we wouldn't have expected, and you certainly are not gonna be doing that work if you're buzzed or drunk. You're really not. That's not a good conduit for the Holy Spirit to work. And so I think it's important that we, think of those things as well.
yeah. Alright, so I wanna move on then to the strategies, some strategies to combat, the summer drinking, and so why don't you lead us through the first one?
Yeah, and sometimes that we go through this stuff and I'm like, is this obvious? But I'm like, I think it's so good to talk it through.
Mhm,
And the good news is mocktails are hot these days, guys. And there are so many options. I even just saw the other day Tom Holland, the actor.
mhm.
Everybody knows him. I think he's what, Spider-Man. I'm not.
Yeah, come on,
I'm
Spidey.
not. That's not really my vibe there, but he seems really cool. I heard him on an interview, and he just came out with a non-alcoholic brand, and he was on this interview, I believe it was with Amy Poehler, and she's like, "Yeah, you quit drinking?" He was like, "Yeah, I had a problem." So, I loved how he just was like, "Yep, yep, I
Yeah,
had to quit." Just
right.
very, and I love a sober celebrity, like, sorry, I'm getting off track, but I love sober celebrities because they actually inspired me so much in the beginning. Because I would be like, "Listen,
Mhm.
if Anne Hathaway can go to the Oscars after party and not drink champagne, I can do it too." You know?
No,
And yeah, go ahead.
well, it's funny you say that because I was talking to someone, last week, and I was talking about the podcast I have, Confessions of a Christian Alcoholic, and how, you know, um, basically they were like, you know, "Why don't you only interview regular people who have struggled?" And I said, "Listen, I have a heart for that, and I would say it's probably like 50-50." I said, "But, like, there is something to be said that I'm not saying everyone, but there are a lot of people who when they see, hey, this person who I know, I've seen, whatever, if they can be honest about their struggle, there is a confidence that there's an inspiration that we tend to draw from that, you know?
There
And
is.
and so I don't think we should diminish that, like, when the Tom Hollands of the world and whatnot talk about their struggles and talk about, not drinking anymore, like, yeah, that's good. We should celebrate that.
Yeah, and I have to say, just about, people in Hollywood, I mean, I know they get a bad rap and everything, but, that's probably one of the hardest places you could ever be sober. I mean, they have access to literally anything at any
Yeah,
time, like,
yeah,
and that's why a lot of them get, hooked on drugs, obviously, because 'cause they're just like, it's like, "Oh, here's some drugs," like,
right.
I can't imagine how hard it is, and so I have a lot of respect for celebrities that are sober, and there's a lot of them, like Bradley Cooper, and even Brad Pitt is sober. I could give you a long list, and it
Right.
it continues to grow. I mean, every time you see someone talking about it on an interview, I'm just like, yes, that's awesome. We're at
Yeah.
this. So anyway, all that to say, going back to the mocktails, there are so many options now of things to try. Now, they're not always like super cheap, but I mean, at the same time, like you do the math, like you're saving money on the alcohol. So
Yeah.
I'm always telling people treat yourselves with a good like variety pack of mocktails wherever that is. Like I think Curious Elixirs was the first one I did. But there's probably 10 or more brands that you can buy from online. And then not to mention all the other fun drinks that you can get in the store now, like Poppy and
Mhm.
Spindrift and, just like let yourself experiment and just have some of these things. Like, cause if you're like me, like I would always say yes to a cocktail, but like not a Coke because that is a lot of
Sugar and
sugar.
calories. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, like, if it's a cocktail, it's like it didn't count. So it's like, okay, like, give yourself permission to have some of those things that you never it's like it used to be like, well, it's either a cocktail or water, but I'm not gonna get soda for $3,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
so silly. But I think, yeah, like, let yourself experiment and try some of those and bring them with you and have them and let yourself have as many as
Yes.
you need. I mean, you might have a stomach ache if you drink, like, 7 mocktails, but,
And that
do what you gotta do to get through.
and that goes to I'm gonna jump to this out of order than what we have in our list in
Yeah.
our notes, but so if the first one is alternatives, um, then I think what you just said there is good about, like or leads into, like, have a plan, right? Like,
Mhm.
have a plan in place, and so for me, and this will kind of answer or speak to both of these things, the alternative and the make a plan, is like, I have found that the non-alcoholic beers now are really good. Now, listen, I'll admit, I haven't had a real beer in 3 years, right? So maybe my taste buds are a little off, but I can tell you that it was pretty quick, right? That, like, the non-alcoholic Stella, I mean, tastes like the real thing to me, you know? And and so there are a lot of the NA alternatives that are really good, and a lot of people and a lot of businesses have seen the benefit, and that the market is shifting, and they are making them, right? And so the NABR alternatives are really good. And then what I do is if I know that I'm going into a environment where maybe there is drinking, not even a lot, like I'll just I'll pick that up and I'll bring that with me, right? And I'll have I always have some of that in my now what was my beer fridge, now my non-alcoholic beer fridge, right? Like I just always have it on hand because there are some times where I'm like, um, you know, we ritualize drinking, right? And so one of the rituals I had was after whenever I did lawn work, I would drink, right? And I would justify it as like, well, basically cutting the grass is like a workout. I mean, so if I'm drinking while I'm doing that, then that's fine, right? And so, um, while I've while it's been 3 years since then, there are still times I'll cut the grass and like that it's almost like that just you get in that brain rut, right? Like, "Oh, man, I could
Mhm.
really use a drink," you know? "Oh, great. I have a non-alcoholic
Now
beer
you
in my
can
beer
have
fridge."
one.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like and it takes care of that for me. So, that would be the second thing is, like, plan ahead. I think you have, like, map out every scenario. You wanna talk
Well,
about that?
yeah, I think, this kind of, yeah, goes to have a goal in mind as well. Well, maybe not, but I think playing the tape forward and get, this is good for every part of life, but just like what if I'm in that situation? What if I'm alone in a room and I have like the opportunity to do this? What am I going to do? So like getting there before you get there like takes away the novelty and takes away like the surprise of the situation. Like just imagine what will you do? Worst case, best case scenario, and then it's like you get ahead of it and you have an opportunity to make a decision before you have to make a decision. And then have your steps, like have your, it's I think it's always great to be like, I'm gonna do these 5 things before I allow like maybe I will drink, but I'm gonna do these 5 things first. And whether that's take
Mm.
10 deep breaths, take a walk around, um, call a friend, stick your face in some ice water, which is highly recommended. I mean, like, honestly, though, that change in body temperature and nervous system, um, that's huge, and I don't even think that's on here, but, like,
Yeah.
change give yourself a change go touch grass, as they say. You
Yeah.
need get your senses involved, and, like, what are the 5 things you're gonna do before you let yourself have that drink? And if you plan that out, you can take those steps even if they feel stupid. But if you have no plan, you're going to just immediately kind of jolt to the thing that you want to do. And that's not a good idea. So,
To that point, I think capitalize on moments of strength to combat moments of weakness. So
yeah,
what
yeah,
I'm
yeah. Like invest in your
y
strength, so you have
yeah, if you have right now, you know, you're on a high, not substance, induced, but you're listening to this, you get off this, you're really motivated, and you have that secret stash, and you're like, "I'm getting rid of that thing." Like, go do that, right?
Mhm.
Because if you wait, that moment of weakness gonna come up, and you're like, "Oh, man, I'm so glad I didn't get rid of that," and, you know? Um,
Yes.
or 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 or, I'll be really open, Monday night, which I guess would probably really be Tuesday morning. I could not sleep. I was replaying a conversation in my head that, didn't really go like how I thought it was gonna go, and I woke up at 3 a.m. and I had a panic attack. And, um, I'm out in my living room. I'm literally shaking, and I'm like, the thought was, "Okay, I'm gonna send a message to this person that I had this conversation with. I'm gonna write them an email, and I'm gonna let them know, like, not tell them off, but, like, let them know, kind of what I was feeling and thinking." Now, in my moments of strength, right, I know I have made the resolve that um no matter what I'm feeling in the moment, if something like that happens, especially when I know and can recognize that I'm in a highly volatile state, I will not send an email. And
Um,
so even though, like, in the moment, I was like, "No, this is a really good idea." I was like, "You know what? Like, strong me, sane me has told me that that's not a good idea, and I'm just gonna wait." And I made a deal with myself. I said, "If I wake up in the morning and after kind of talking with my wife about it, feel the same way, then I will get to send the email, and I will send the email." Guess what? I went to sleep. I got some rest. I took some medication to help me with the panic attack. And when I got up, like, I was way more clear headed. And I was like, man, I am so glad I did not send that email. you know?
yeah,
And it's like, because
absolutely.
in my moments of strength previously had prepared me for what I was going to do in this moment of weakness, you know? And I think that is a really good thing to like think through when you're planning ahead.
Yes, and my other favorite thing is, remembering that it's already tomorrow in Australia. So,
Oh,
I
good.
don't know why I don't know why that's helpful, but to me, I would be like, "Okay, well, like, somebody already made it to tomorrow without drinking," so, imagine just, imagine you're tomorrow already. Like, I don't know, it's a weird thing I do, like, time zones, but I would always think, like, "Are you gonna wake up tomorrow and be glad that you drank?" No. Well, I don't know why
Mm,
thinking about Australia and it already being tomorrow, sort of does something to my brain, but it really helps me, and I don't know
yeah,
why.
yeah. All right. So number
Okay,
three,
so then
have a
yeah.
goal in mind. Talk about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think goals matter, right? Because, that's why the 30-day challenges are so I'm not saying 30-day challenges are the end all be all, but, if you're hanging on to get to a certain day or get to the end of the weekend, if that's all you have to hang on to, that can get you through. But if you have no goals and you have nothing in mind and you're just like, I'm just doing this because I don't think I should drink today. I don't know. It's like, I remember when I was working to be able to do strict pull-ups when I was in CrossFit. And it was like, well, if I didn't have that goal, I wouldn't have been as motivated to keep up my strength training and all the special, the skills and the things I needed to do to get there. And so having a goal, whether it's a fitness goal or whether it's a day count goal or whatever, that can and again, I will say that, all of these don't work for everyone. We're all different,
Right.
right? This may not work for everybody, but having an end goal is helpful to be like, okay, I've got to get over the finish line. It's not forever. And that eliminates that fear of forever. And you start doing your brain goes all over the place when you think about forever. And so having the goal, I think, really matters. Um, yeah.
Um, I agree. Like, I think, now some people love their, like, sobriety counter apps, and I tried one, and that, like, I don't know, it just didn't do it for me. But not because I think that's a bad strategy, not because I think that's bad, it just didn't click with me, right? Um, but for me, f the goal for me the goals for me that really helped me were actually having small goals. So, I remember being overwhelmed, and I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. I remember being really overwhelmed by the idea of, like, um, you know, I'm never gonna drink again, or when I get to this point next year, just think about how great it will be to have made it a year, and, like, that was just, like, so overwhelming to me, you know? So I was
Mhm.
like, "Hey, what if I can just make it through?" And sometimes it's like the day, right? But for me, it was like, what if I can just make it through this family event, right? Like,
Mhm.
can I make it through Christmas morning without drinking, right? And so to me, it was like making it more bite-sized, right? And breaking those things
Mhm.
down.
And also, I think what can be helpful is looking and trying to treat yourself like I'm kind of
Mm,
experimenting, like I like to say like being a journalist of yourself, being a researcher of yourself. Like you're kind of watching from the outside and like what happens? Like how did you feel? Like writing it down, like as almost if it's not you, and it becomes like a project outside of your own body, and that
mm,
can be helpful too in like just giving you something else than just, like, being in the moment.
yeah.
And I think, that can be really helpful. So we also have on here we're running out of time, but, escape route, which is something I was like, you don't have to go to the party. This is something I heard way
Mm,
back when I was in the Luckiest Club. I remember Laura McCowan, who started the Luckiest Club. I remember she put a post up that said, "You don't have to go to the party." So, you may if you wanna go, you should go, but at the same time, if you're feeling, like, really weak and you're like, "Is this gonna be awful?" Like, and you're in those beginning stages, like, it's okay in the beginning of this to opt out of some things if it feels too hard. And so I'm not saying you have to, but you can, and you don't have to like, there may be people that get offended by that, and that's a whole other conversation in terms of boundaries and how we handle the people in our lives and their expectations. But I think in early days, like it's okay to give yourself permission to opt out, or to leave early. Be like, I gotta go.
yep.
Like showed up and you leave. And so I think that's really important too. And then going on to the rewarding section here, I think I mean, like, give yourself a reward for making it through,
Treat
and
yourself.
yes, have something at the end of the day, like, I'm very guilty of using sweets for this, which I just had a blood test that said my glucose was high, so maybe I need to
Uh-oh, Ericka.
figure that out, but I have used it as an excuse, but especially in early days, again, like, the goal is, our focus is, like, to get this sort of out of our life, and like however we need to do that as long as it's not sinful, like let's do those things and give
Yeah.
ourselves rewards, and then we've got to deal with other things. Like once you get sober, like you got all kinds of other things to deal with. The process of self-refinement and sanctification is never ending, but one thing at a time, and I think the rewards can be helpful for that.
One thing I wanna say about the escape route aspect is, like, my wife has given me permission, really, and we'll before we go into, like, a party or a situation where we know there's alcohol or whatnot, we'll kind of, brush up on this, but she's like, "Hey, if at any point you are feeling overwhelmed, you are feeling a temptation, um, like, you know, we can we can go, right? And we can say, and we'll find like, okay, what's an excuse that is true, that we can use, hey, you know what? Uh, uh, sorry, but blah, 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 right? And so in a sense, we kind of always have like, a plan, a code word, a whatever, um, you know, I think one of them was like, "Just say you're not feeling well," because actually you're not feeling well, right? Now they don't have like
Yeah.
like, they may assume that it's your stomach, but what we know is it's your mental health, and that's okay, and that is just as legitimate of an excuse for us to leave as your tummy troubles. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well. We have to leave. That's true. I'm not feeling
Mental
well.
health mental health is health.
Yeah. Um, Finally, we talk about like, journaling, right? And really, like, um, uh, I think hand to paper is really powerful.
Yes.
And I have found that, it has been one of the keys to me really kind of unlocking some things. Now, with that as well, I would say, and even though we've been, really practical here, is like when you're journaling, it's like, I wanna encourage you to be abiding in Christ, right? Like, and approaching these and thinking through these things spiritually. Because ultimately, what Ericka and I have found is what I had said earlier, that expulsive power of a new affection. That all the tips and all the tricks and everything that we give you are good, and they can help you get sober and stay sober, but ultimately, the goal is not just sobriety, right? The goal is like, I want you to have a flourishing, fulfilled life now and in eternity. And sobriety can be a part of that, especially if you struggle with addiction. But it's not what's going to ultimately, fulfill you. So I think those are our strategies to combat. Those are our 5 myths. Those are our stories. Any closing and final thoughts, Ericka, for, when it does get really hard, if someone does relapse, like what encouragement do you have?
Well, I always wanna say that, if you do relapse, it's so it drives me crazy when I see people like, "I'm back at day 1," and it's like, well, you can call it day 1 or whatever, but, like, man, all those days and all that work that you did to get there, it counts so much, and it all matters so much, and it's all part of the journey, and, like, now here, it's like, yes, I'm 5 years sober, but, like, how many times was I, like, going back, and I kept starting over, but it was like all of that stuff counts too, and God is working through every bit of that, and so please, like, if you find yourself back at day 1, um, that's not really day 1, like, it's not really day 1,
Mhm.
and so please, like, give yourself the credit and look back and see what God showed you through
Yes.
those other experiences, because all of that counts and is contributing to the person that you're becoming through this process, which is that the whole sanctification process again that like never ends.
Mhm.
Even if you quit drinking, like we're still going through it. And so please know you're not alone, and it day 1 is not really day 1.
My final thing is, listen, I think when it comes to summer drinking and all of the stuff that we said, that even if they are myths, even if it is a myth that like, that by not drinking you're not missing out, or that not everyone around you is drinking. Like even if those things are true, I think it's hard at times for us to see that. And so my encouragement to you is it's okay to grieve, right? Like I had to grieve alcohol. I had to grieve not drinking because even though now I know those things aren't true, it was hard for me to see those in the beginning. And it may be hard for you to see those right now. And so grieve it. Like go through that grieving process. And I think in that process, invite Jesus into that. But that's okay. You're not weird, right? You're not weird for like feeling some of the things, even though we have said they are quote unquote myths. So, man, Ericka, thank you so much for joining. We need to do this more often. Go
Yeah.
get Erica's book, Freely Sober. I think especially for women, like it is such a great resource, freelysober.com. And then if you haven't picked up my book yet, you can go to, I'll put that, christianalcoholic.com, and you can pick it up there as well. Ericka, thank you. Appreciate you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
John.
everyone.
I'll see you guys later. Bye.